And so again, on behalf of Last Prisoner Project, thank you all to the panelists who have taken time out of their Saturday to talk with our constituents about getting hired in the cannabis industry. So thank you very much. I'll just do a quick intro of Last Prisoner Project and the work that we're doing on the reentry side. And then I promise we'll get right to the good stuff. So Last Prisoner Project was started with the intent to help release the 40,000 people who are still currently incarcerated for cannabis. And then we realized that reentry is definitely an issue and a bit concerned. I myself received 87 months in prison for depositing cannabis profits into my account. I came home, got a job, and got fired. And so LPP realizes that, the community as a whole can do more to invite those negatively impacted into the space. And so we created reentry resource center for constituents. And so most of the constituents that we'll have in the audience today came from that network of constituents that we have built. If there's anyone in the audience that has not tapped in with Last Prisoner Project that has been negatively impacted by the war on cannabis, whether you were personally impacted or a parent or a child of someone negatively impacted, I will drop the link in the chat as soon as I'm done speaking so that you can connect with us. And we have so many resources available, starting with these webinars that will happen monthly, just educating you all on how to get in the industry. Along with, we have cannabis scholarships that are available, cannabis education scholarships. We have one from the Academy of Cannabis Science on there. And once you sign up, you'll receive the newsletter every 2 weeks with these opportunities. There's Oaksterdam, there's so many folks who have donated scholarships for our constituents. And then there's also the Banks Job Board, the Cannabis Job Board, along with assistance with resume writing from banks. And there's one more thing I'm forgetting. Resource application, funding applications. If you're struggling, LPP is here to assist. And so that's all I have to say. I will drop the link right now for the reentry resources, along with the link for a placeholder for next webinar, the second Saturday of May. So 2 things I'm going to drop, and then I'm going to pass the mic to Mr. Trey Reckling.
Thank you, Evelyn. My name is Trey. I'm the founder and director for Academy of Cannabis Science. We're very proud to be partnered with LPP on their efforts, and we hope that you will look them up and find out more about scholarship opportunities that we have. But want to get right to the heart of this. We are very lucky to have some stellar people on the panel today, and we're welcoming Yoko Miyashita from Leafly, Jeff Freeman from both MFUSED and Polite Brand Cannabis, and Jessica Pichardo of both Dockside Cannabis and Canna Luz. But I would like them to introduce themselves a little bit better and do their bios a little bit better justice. Yoko, could we start with you? You're my first and my left to right.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me here today, Trey. I'm Yoko. I'm the CEO of Leafly. We're a leading cannabis information resource and marketplace. So unlike many others directly involved in cannabis, we are a non-plant touching ancillary technology services business. My background actually is as a lawyer. So I was trained and worked in private practice for several years. And then I went and worked for a company called Getty Images, which was a media photojournalism. So the leap from Getty Images to a cannabis media and marketplace was actually a really great and natural transition for me. I came into Leafly in a legal role, but then transitioned to a business role to lead the company last August. So happy to share my past experiences, what I've experienced working in cannabis for the last 2 years, to see if I can help anyone along in their journey.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Freeman, Jeff, how you doing? Tell us a little bit more about you.
Great. Thanks for having me here. I am the co-founder of MFUSED as well as Polite. We are a extraction and a CPG company, so really public facing. We make and manufacture products and sell and distribute them. We're really focused on the collection of data, understanding our intended audience, and we've been in the cannabis space for just about 10 years. So we've been able to see and also be involved hands-on in the development of people's cannabis consciousness. I myself was introduced to the plant tragically at a really early age. My father was involved in a drug transaction and was murdered. And so for me, being in the cannabis space was really not a pathway I was going to take. But it turned out that my mom really wanted to find some alternative options for her pharmaceuticals. She's disabled. My mom's disabled. And so I kind of took it on myself to champion it, get involved really early, and have been in this space, like I said, for 10 years, creating products. And then now what's more important to me is really just making sure that I create a career path for people in my community. I'm really young to be in the position that I am in with the company success that I have. And I really just want to make sure that I open doors for others that are just like me and also have been directly impacted, but also indirectly impacted. The war on drugs is specific to this, is played an incredible role on my life and has shaped my life directly. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm excited, and I hope I add a lot of value to you guys.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. And Jessica Pichardo. How are you doing, Jessica?
I'm doing well, Trey. Thank you so much for the intro. And thank you, everyone. I'm so grateful to be here sharing this space and energy with everyone. As Trey mentioned, my name is Jessica Pichardo. I am the operations manager for Dockside Cannabis. That's in Seattle, Washington. So I help support 4 different locations, which is really exciting. But I started as a bud tender 9 years ago. I left other industries and started from the bottom. And so it was really that entry point that had the most learning. And I'm so grateful to be here to share some experience. I'm also part of the Cannabis Alliance. I'm a board member there, and we strive for a more diverse and sustainable industry, and so equitable as well. So I'm very excited to be here, a part of that. And I founded Canna Luz, which is a consulting company and has led me to all of these spaces. So I hope to add value today with my experience. People who find out that I'm in cannabis now kind of chuckle, because as a Latina, the reefer madness worked on myself and my own family. And so it was my goal to make sure to shed a little light and shed the stigmas that permeate through our communities, and make sure that I can take the 9 years of experience that I have and make it easier for folks to jump in and hit the ground running. So thank you, Trey, for the space, and excited to talk with everyone.
Thank you very much. And thank you for mentioning the Cannabis Alliance. I'm also with the Cannabis Alliance and on the board there. And we want to make sure everybody on the call today knows that you're welcome to attend our events. So if you go to thecannabisalliance.us, everything is free now while we're doing it virtually. So even if you're not in Washington State, we invite you to come and join us. We also have happy hours on Tuesday from 4 to 5 is a great place to start, drop in and talk to some other cannabis professionals. So let's get started. And I'm going to ask you kind of a hefty question, you all. So we'll have to be brief, I know, but what is it like working in the cannabis industry? How is it the same as any other job? And how is it very different? Anybody want to tackle that?
I'll take it. All right, so I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur. I've worked for myself since I was 23 years old. Just really wanted to be my own man, my own boss. And I find that this is really relatable. It's really dynamic. It shifts very quickly, both from a regulatory standpoint, but also from a technology standpoint, as well as all the other emerging industries that are being involved. What I found that's most exciting is my suspicion is that this business in this industry is just as large as alcohol, tobacco, a potential of that of pharmaceuticals, and even textiles, right? If you incorporate hemp. And so you have this entire ecosystem and infrastructure that needs to be developed. And if you have the energy and the passion and the desire to really professionalize and continue to learn and iterate, you can make a really big impact. It's challenging in that there's 280E tax, which is a tax code that makes it really difficult for us to operate and run a company and not write things off that other businesses traditionally can. But what it does is it forces us to really understand and be exceptional owner operators. And then when we foresee this thing going federally legal, what will end up happening is we'll have a little bit more access to both capital and freedom to make more traditional business decisions. And so right now it's like, hey, cut your teeth, continue to get better every day, kind of ride this thing out, build a really big footprint. And most importantly, the thing that I like the most about this is really picking my team and having like a really amazing group of people and spotting talent and bringing them into my organization.
Great, thank you. Jessica, could you give us a little, your own answer on that, or your own angle on that?
Absolutely. I wanted to just echo what Jeff said in the sense that if you, a lot of us are hungry, and if you want to make dinner now, you can do that by just a lot of passion and really taking every opportunity to learn. A lot of times people think that the only time that they're in the spotlight is when they're in a room like this where others might be watching, but really it's when you're on your own and you're really pushing yourself to gain knowledge in every experience, whether that be with a customer or, even if you're not in the industry yet, thinking, how can I take what I'm doing now and how does that make sense for the industry in the future? So making sure to build skills and be really open to learning in every space, whether that be personally or professionally, and you can, bring that into the industry. The very same way, in the 9 years, I really am proud to say that I've gone from bud tender to board member and business owner. And that happened with a lot of hard work and keeping eyes and ears open all the time. And making sure that, I put my best foot forward, even as a customer, when I go shop somewhere, when I didn't have a job yet, if I was going into a dispensary, I made sure to, ask questions, get to know the people that are there. Those are the ways as well that you get more comfortable in the setting that you wish to then be in. And so it's really, really a great thing that we get to sometimes be the first in. And so, Jeff, congratulations on Infused and Polite. Very, very, a big fan of your product lines and your success. And I think it's a really great example of what you can do. So I think the difference, to also echo Jeff, is just some of the federal speed bumps and brick walls, frankly, that we run into in order to run like normal businesses. So normally when you're in a job, bringing value is utterly important, but in cannabis, it's almost like you got to double down because of those federal, like I said, brick walls that we run into. So those are some major differences, but nothing that, can't be, I guess, pushed through if we all do it together. And that really has been my goal, was to get into spaces where I could begin hiring people, where I could change the face of what the teams look like in the industry and create something that looked a little more like myself and my neighbors and my family and my community. So I think once you can get into a space, if you're interested in making impact and creating that change, it really is just, keep it moving and again, keep it learning. So Yoko, did you have any info there or any insight as well?
I'm not sure I could build on your answers, but they're just so complete and comprehensive.
Well, Yoko, let me put you on the spot for something else then. You run one of the largest, most significant resources for cannabis worldwide. So as an applicant for a job at Leafly or somewhere else, what would you recommend to an applicant about how upfront they're going to be about their former incarceration status? And then when is the most important time, or when's the most appropriate time to bring that up?
Yeah, that's a great question. We spend a lot of time at Leafly educating our employees on the history of cannabis, history of the plant, history of prohibition. So everyone who works for Leafly understands how this has played out as a failed policy and impacts on individuals. So, I look at this as a responsibility first and foremost, me and my team, to understand the context in which we operate. So for candidates coming in, we just want you to be upfront about it. You'll usually, if you're applying to Leafly and you're, selected for the next round, that first call with your recruiter is a great opportunity to just tell your story. And we're doing the work on this end to make sure people can understand that story, understand the context for it. And it's a hard one to have, but we're prepared doing the work on this end to be prepared to have that conversation, because this is, the one thing I'll add to the last question, how is this different? This is an industry that has a unique history, and we get to build this from scratch going forward. We get to write different rules. We get to decide how this is going to play out differently in society to increase social justice, to right the wrongs. So I look at this as a conversation that we need to have. I want to understand where you're coming from and let me help you find the right opportunity, whether that's with us or beyond that.
That's great. So if somebody's an applicant, what are the transferable skills or experience that are good to have or make for a better candidate panelists? What's I know like Yoko says, we need everything. And Jeff talked about infrastructure. It's a baby industry that's gonna have tremendous potential. But what are some of those skills? Because a lot of people haven't worked in cannabis before. So what does the industry need that way?
I'd love to field this one first, just from the retail perspective. In the time that I've been in the legal cannabis industry for the last 9 years, both in Colorado and in Washington, the retail space calls for, just to kind of use your language, Trey, we're building, right? So I'm noticing in the chat, talking about plant touching jobs can sometimes be inaccessible for folks that are on probation or have, certain hurdles that they are still overcoming in that whole marathon. And so, in the sense of building, there are folks that need to build these dispensaries, right? If you want to get closer to these sorts of things, that could be something. If you're on the retail side, something that's really helpful, I've had a lot of applicants who were in the grocery industry because they did stocking and inventory. And so those sorts of skills translate directly to keeping counts, making sure that we're taking inventory in and orders are correct, making sure that we're counting things and doing, inventory checks. Those sorts of things translate from the grocery industry, from other retail spaces, even from fast food. So those particular things are ways that you can talk, hey, I've done these sorts of skills, but it sounds like that's something that exists within a store. And so on the retail space, those are some of the really great things. I think that attention to detail, again, being open to learning. I always kind of joke that I don't want to hire the person who thinks they know everything, because that's not me, and that's not anybody in this industry. It is so, far in its infancy that in its legal world that, that's not the person I want to hire. So that's just some of my insight on some of the skills that might be helpful in the retail. Jeff, I know I'd love to kind of know more about your producer processor side.
Yeah, thank you. For myself, the positions that I see that are most equitable and then you can have the biggest impact are more nuanced, right? So a little bit more unique. There's always a need for light manufacturing, warehouse work, but really that is an entry-level position. That's a great way to get into the industry. What I would implore is really make sure that you work with fantastic owner-operators, people that are really try to identify companies that are run by the owners, because they're going to sort of take that time to help develop you, create a career path, but more specifically, things that are more ancillary to Yoko's point, things that don't touch the plant, photography. We have social media management, things you can learn online. I'm a big advocate of data, collection of data, building consumer profiles. And so just kind of taking certificate programs, both through Trey's organization as well as others, those are great options. And then of course, just as very similar to, the retail space, having inventory specialists, warehouse specialists, facility maintenance, facility management, equipment maintenance. These are things that don't necessarily directly touch the plant, but if you have a trade or a skill, you can apply that and bring that into an industrial processing, scenario. That is what I see as, real actionable positions that we're always looking for. Those are somewhat skilled, but I think if you can generate those skills quickly, then you'll have a great opportunity for us. So maybe Yoko, you can kind of tell us about yourself and what positions you're looking for.
It's really interesting because I think a lot about operators. You guys are both operators, whether that's in the retail space or the production side. And as sort of sitting one layer above that, the one thing I would look at is, and because we're a larger organization, sometimes you come in and you don't actually really know what you want to do. Like, what do I want to do when I grow up? Is this the right role for me? But I look for specific traits, right? Are you a strong communicator? Are you curious? And can you bring these into any work situation that you come in as? So for us, a big part of our business is we work with retail stores, and we want to get them listed on Leafly so our consumers can find the products that they're looking for at the store nearest them. In which case, we've got tons of, we need a lot of people who can have those conversations with our retail partners and say, is our service working for you? What's not working? What's broken down? Let me help you problem solve that. And like core to that is a skill around communication and wanting to help others. So communication plus empathy, like that to me builds a number of different pathways in a company like ours. I've had people who come in on the sales side who work with customers and realize, actually, I have these skills of communication and empathy, but they're way better targeted in an HR role. So let me jump from sales to HR, and I want to execute and use those exact same skills to help employees. And, whether it's communication with employees, whether it's employee programs. So I look at that transferability, and, I've seen then a person in HR saying, I'm really liking the data part of this. I really like the numbers part of the job. I'm actually going to make the leap over here into finance and help with our accountants and help them process accounts payable or process AR or work my way and learn the skills as I go. So there's just a whole range of transferable skills that can help ladder up to different roles, especially if you don't know what you want at the outset.
And that's great. So participants, I hope you're hearing this. One, there's lots of jobs outside of licensee jobs or outside of plant touching jobs. Two, if you have transferable skills, you might just have to think about how to sell those, how to help the employer understand that those are valuable, because they might not know they're needing your skill. We're young enough industry that happens, and then three, learn the vernacular. If you're going to go into the cannabis space, you need to know the language that people in cannabis use. So for one, if you're talking just about indica, sativa, and hybrid, that's a tell. And people say, well, their information might be a little immature. So I would encourage you to go to a site like Leafly and see how they're speaking about cannabis, because kudos to Leafly, they've taken a real huge jump and broken out of that mold and said, hey, we need to speak about this more scientifically in a way that serves patients and consumers and everybody, that's not just novel and easy. And so they've really helped the industry to grow. But if you don't have the language, it tells you might not have done your research. So that's a great free opportunity to go online and learn a lot. And so do some homework there too, and be ready for that environment. Now, being a young industry, immaturity is sometimes a problem in some of these businesses. Like Jeff said, find a good business to work for. Don't feel so hungry to get a job, feel like you have to settle for the first chance in the industry. Some of the opportunities are not great. Some of the companies are not being run well. So does anybody want to talk about some of the challenges that may exist in the cannabis industry right now, and because you can compromise yourself. You can walk into a situation where somebody might be breaking the law, and you certainly don't want to step into that. So anybody want to talk about some of the challenges of being a young industry and how that can make life kind of challenging for a new employee?
Yeah, I'd love to field this one first. To your point, Trey, I think the biggest challenge is just the immaturity of the space and how quickly things are shifting, right? Both from a state by state legalization, the dynamics of medical marijuana versus recreational marijuana, and the hardest part that we face is, we're writing the book. And so what are we doing? We're looking at comparable industries, relatable industries to try to develop best practice. But what you'll have is, I find that there's a lot of people that understand business. There's a lot of people that understand cannabis, but there's very few of us that understand the cannabis business. And so it's really important to get that bridge and then have a team that's really committed, right? When you're writing the playbook, when you're writing the script, you're in control of the narrative, but you may not actually know all of the best decisions. This isn't a traditional business. I'm involved in touching the plant. There's tons of regulation involved. There's all kinds of dynamics, like I said, with taxing, and there's challenges there. And so for myself, One of the biggest challenges is just making sure that you find empathetic, passionate owner operators who have a bigger vision and mission that they're going to tackle, because they're going to really be a part of that ride. And they're not just looking just to capitalize and throw the money in their pocket and stay in the ivory tower. They want to be involved. They want to develop careers. They want to develop people. That's something I'm really passionate about. And I think that's served our company well with me and my partners, because we're all very passionate about that same mission. And so I just, even though it's really hard to do, try to collect as much context as you can around the brands, both socially, understanding their impact, and then furthermore, just, you know, focusing on what's going to be the right fit for yourself and where you can really add value. And I cannot express enough, the opportunity to work with owner operators is a great way to showcase your lateral ability in terms of your thinking and your solutions and how solution-based you are, but also have a very clear impact and show your impact on the company. So maybe Jessica or Yoko, you guys can tell me some of your challenges that you see.
Yeah, to build on that, Jeff, I think it's very important for folks to be able to pivot and be comfortable with change and be open to new opportunities in different lanes of the industry. Kind of to Yoko's point earlier, you know, I started as a bud tender, but I didn't know if I wanted to manage people until I saw other people do it well and also not well. And so being also just aware of what's happening, you know, in your peripherals as well can really inform where you want to go in the industry. And to Jeff's point, you know, there's a lot of owner operators who have the passion and the purpose fueling them versus the profit and maybe, you know, the headlines, right? There, I've had opportunities to work with teams that I think have done a little of both, and you know, is why I've landed where I am now, particularly in my lane with Dockside Cannabis. I'm so grateful to have 3 owners and operators who really truly are interested in creating a different look to what cannabis is on the retail space, both for what we curate and product for the customer, but also for our team. I am so passionate about making sure that my team's focused on career development and being ready to answer the call. And what that means is putting, you know, empowering them and trusting them with new opportunities and making sure that, again, we're not just sitting at a table, we're building a bigger one and making sure that folks can come and learn new things. And so I feel like, you know, places like Dockside are attempting to do those things in big ways in the community. I did want to talk just briefly as well about getting to know the community. To Jeff's point, you know, we are writing the book and we're writing it together, though. We're all running into some of the same challenges. And so when you do get into the industry, it's nice to tap into the community in different spaces, whether that be through, you know, the Cannabis Alliance or again, certificate programs. All of those things left and right really do help. I saw in the questions someone asked, you know, is certificate courses versus like an Oaksterdam University, do those things work equally for you? And I think so. It's really about gaining the knowledge and bringing the knowledge to the conversation, not necessarily the certificate, if that makes sense. It's being armed with the, you know, different parts of the plant and making sure that we know a little bit more on this legal side. So I'm not sure if Trey, you wanted to kick it somewhere new, but I think that was a really great question and one that hopefully we added some value to.
And thanks for bringing in that question from the Q&A, Jessica, because it can be frustrating, and especially if you're approaching your job search in your traditional way and you go on Indeed or Monster or somewhere else and you apply to a number of jobs and you just don't hear back. We really encourage you to get involved locally. If you're lucky enough to be in a state where this is legal, find out what's the professional organization. If it's not the Cannabis Alliance, is there a group like Canna Luz that's there to help you? There's a great organization out of Oakland called the Hood Incubator that's helping Black, Indigenous people of color to start their own businesses, to help apply for licenses, which is critical. But not everybody's ready to start their own business, right? We always encourage people to go and learn on somebody else's dime. You know, if you think you want to start a business, go work in that industry, in that sector, in somebody else's company, and learn from them, right and wrong, what you would do the same and what you would do differently. So anything to add to that? But getting connected really makes a difference. Then networking doesn't have to be dry, and it's not dry in our space. Cannabis networking is a lot of fun. You just got to find the right group, I think. So we have another question from a participant. This was mailed in advance. What is something you wish you had known before you came into the cannabis industry? Anybody want to take that? I know that's a broad question.
I'll step in and just give a little nugget. You know, I wish I would have known the passion that people have for the plant, right? I find that some people use that passion to rationalize and justify things that maybe aren't what they should be focused on, but I wish I would have understood that. And more importantly, I really wish I had understood the community. I got in cannabis very early on. And so hard for me to see before that because I got in so early that it was something that I saw an incredible opportunity to both, you know, create real change, but also have a really big impact and then change, you know, my economic status by being conscious to what I'm doing and also doing it the right way. And so I think just the impact of the community. I had a company of mine that was sort of taken in terms of the brand, going and making the conversion to from medical marijuana to recreational marijuana. And I wish that I had known how important the relationships were that I was building, because the community supported me and they kind of vouched for me and they believed in me and they gave me that second chance, even though I kind of had egg on my face by allowing someone to kind of swoop in and take my brand, not understanding that I wasn't protected the way I needed to be. And so I added a lot of people to my team. Yoko will know my CEO, Young. That's really when we brought him in, was sort of for protection and more executive firepower. And I just think I wish I would have known that you don't have to touch the plant, as well as you should apply for licenses. In whatever state you are in, you should be involved, equitable licenses. You should absolutely be involved. That's a great way to get an opportunity to get, you know, something that is going to be, you know, equitable, that you're going to be able to build off of. Even if you don't have a vision or a plan, definitely go for that. So
thank you, Jeff.
I can jump in here. I think the one thing that I had joined this industry, again, leaving, I think what most would find a secure, you know, job with a 401k and things like that, that just was not serving me. And the plant itself really allowed me to get through things and through a portion of my life that allowed me to really be a flourishing, you know, citizen now, where I'm able to show up daily for the people in my life, both personally and professionally. And so I started in a medical only market. It was not legally, wasn't recreationally legal. And so working with patients, you know, I learned very early, Jeff, that passion of the plant, you know, it really was about how it was helping folks. And that was some of the foundations of my experience in the industry. And I think I knew that, but I also wasn't aware of I guess the inequities are there in ownership, but you don't realize that. That was very discouraging for me, working for almost 8 years in the industry over and over again for folks that just didn't look like me, right? Or I didn't see myself represented in the community. So for me, the initial inequities on the legal end, while I was not blind to those things, they are very apparent. And the only way that we can change that is, again, by having these sorts of conversations and bringing others with us. And that's my number one goal now, both as an operator, but as what I do with Canna Luz. So anyone here, please, you know, Canna Luz really is meant to just be that information source, be that side window and that back door for to offer any and all networking and resources that I have to you know, get you to the places that you'd like to go, because that really is so important. And I think something that again, while it's not that I didn't know, but getting that experience and feeling through those things and again, working to get to a space where I could create some change was something that I now know and hope to just make more apparent for others so that we can do that together.
Thank you. And if you don't mind putting the link to Canna Luz in the chat so people can find you. And I think, like Yoko mentioned, you know, this is being a young industry, it is very unique in that we get to build, we get to start from scratch, and at no other time have women and people of color had a chance to start on the same starting line. And we're still not doing it right. We're still far from doing it right. But operations like Jessica's are so important. Could we talk a little bit, Yoko, do you mind talking a little bit? Because I know you're involved in this. Some people have records that they're seeking to be expunged. And I know how that goes about is very different from state to state. But could you talk a little bit about the challenges of that, or some things people might want to think about as they try to expunge some records and just take some of that weight off of their, off of themselves so they can move forward in this industry?
Yeah, no, happy to. This is actually a project that Jessica and I have been co-chairing through the Cannabis Alliance as part of the, and Jeff as part of the Equity and Justice Committee. But in Washington State, if you've got a nonviolent cannabis conviction, it is eligible to be expunged. That is cleared off your record. When this bill was passed in 2019, we, from state records, we're aware that up to 66,000 people in this state alone were eligible to have that record removed. Except there was no funding for a program, and an individual would actually have to file a petition in the court in which they were convicted to actually have that removed. And almost 2 years after that bill was passed, less than 100 people have taken advantage of that. So I think what we're working on specifically in Washington State is to actually programmatically support while also lobbying for auto expungement of these records. And until we actually get each of these expunged, we are trying to build through partnerships with the legal community, with the impacted community, and the Cannabis Alliance and volunteers, just a process for individuals to take advantage of services to get their records expunged. Now, that's Washington State. What we've seen in other states is a model where, as part of their legalization statute, these records are automatically expunged. In that instance, if you're an impacted individual, you don't have to go and petition. States already provided as part of their legalization program that they will fund and actually implement that. So it is a state by state look at where you may or may not have, what steps you may or may not have to do. I'd actually be curious. I think maybe the LPP folks do a fair amount of this through directly and or through partnerships, but it's a key part of sort of that reset for individuals to say, all right, like, the times have changed. It is not fair to have this on my record. How do I start that process? And just connecting you and helping you get to those resources, I think, is a key part of this.
Great.
And one that we're looking to tackle.
Thank you very much. And I know this is kind of a wide open question, but anything talking about the future in cannabis is at best an educated guess, right? We've seen that regulations and laws are so, we have this feudal system and things are different in every state. But if you all were to encourage people to look into a specific sector of the industry, saying, look, that's just not taken off yet. And gosh, if I was starting over, that's an area of the industry that I would keep an eye on. So as people are thinking about training themselves and getting exposure and experience, do you have any areas of the, I talked to a gentleman here in Washington, and he just got his transport license. So he was super excited because that's a problem we've had here where brands have had to basically carry their product to all over the state themselves. So he wants to kind of be a Frito-Lay job. He wants to take a lot of brands and help to distribute those for the brands. But is there a part of the sector of the industry that people should keep an eye on?
I've got one for this, and I'm watching this as we watch legalization bills, and there have just been a ton. It started with the November elections. New York just legalized. Virginia just moved up their state deadline, and you got a bunch of other states just in the process of. New Mexico governor's about to sign their bill if they haven't already. But a part of all of these new statutes is home grow, allowing for anywhere from 4 to 8 plants per person. And we looked at this as the Cannabis Alliance and sponsoring some legislation here in Washington State. But if you think about home grow, you've got not just seeds, but everything you need to actually grow plants, whether that's soil, whether that's, all of the ancillary fertilizer or scaffolding that you want to build for your plants to train them. And I think about that as there is a whole nother industry to be built on the backs of home grow. It's just one of, and that's sort of what I'm thinking about this week. But this is a space where it just goes so deep. It has so much space to move in that through the conversations that everyone's talking about, through curiosity, through networking and just talking to people in the industry, you can start to peel apart and find all of these nuggets of things that have yet to be fully explored.
Absolutely. And you think about how popular home brewing is, and growing weed is so much more fun. And so it's so much better for you and makes it so much more cost effective if you're a patient to have your medicine. So I totally agree. And I'm excited for people who are going to get to have the experience of growing their own cannabis. That's because it's lights, it's soil, it's everything. And anybody who can grow a patio tomato can grow this plant, right? Autoflowers are wonderful. Any other sectors of the industry we need to be watching? Jeff, you're nodding.
I am extremely, extremely excited about the data and data analysts, right? Building profiles, both of customers, understanding pricing, the dynamics of retail, what your targets are, taking that information and using it to curate products, knowing your intended audience, right? That is an absolutely enormous part of the cannabis industry that still needs to be generated. We have a lot of people who are operating businesses like home grows. They're making the products that they like, and they are doing the best that they can, and they're potentially, honestly or inaccurately, potentially showing their product as a premium product when it's not a premium product. It's the best they can do. And so by understanding the metrics and analytics, you'll be able to sort of have a much greater chance of success. And so I specifically am looking for data-driven people that I can take this information that I've collected, because it is public information, the sales data, because of the federal legalization. You can track this information down, and you can build an entire ecosystem that tells you all transactions to retail, all transactions from retail to customers, and then look at your final customer base, and then come back and reevaluate your decision-making as a business, as well as the ability to develop and adopt things like lean manufacturing, where you're tracking your processing and making sure that you're being very lean and efficient. This, to me, is the actual meat and potatoes of the development of the industry of cannabis, which I'm extremely passionate about. It's not necessarily driven directly from the plant. It's studying the industry, where it's going, adopting best practice, and developing things that are very obviously showing ROI, and you will make an incredibly big impact on a company. And if a company is at a certain level of maturity where they're tracking analytics and they are aware of those things, they're not just sort of running a restaurant style company, you will be able to make an enormous impact and have a really big, and you personally can kind of start shaping the way the space is developing.
Excellent. Yeah. So if somebody's interested in data, there are a number of software companies, all the seed to sale companies that track that through the process are something to watch. Dashboard is something to watch. Data collection companies, but absolutely, as things become more competitive, people will have to have this knowledge in order to compete and be successful. Jessica, anything to add? Any crystal ball from you?
Yeah, the only thing that I'm very excited about, and I'm hoping to drive equity licensor for BIPOC individuals first, for delivery, transport, and event spaces or consumption spaces. These three areas are not fully developed and are still being, I feel like case studied to see how it's going to affect communities or affect the children and affect, all of these different things. But those particular licenses in most spaces don't exist yet. And so when they do come through, I see that being a way that we can really drive equity into the market based on the amount of licenses that have gone to white ownership versus, say, for example, in Washington, which I know very well right now, is 2% Black ownership in the state. It's just absolutely astronomical, and it keeps me up at night. So that is definitely when delivery spaces and event spaces come up. I think that's a real great way that folks can jump in. As Jeff said, go for those licenses, even if you don't have the the van yet, even if you don't have the space yet. If you're able to land something like that, that's a real great way to build businesses and be the first there.
I cannot not add something to what Jessica, what you just said is incredibly impactful, because so many people want to be involved in owning a company, but they're not looking at all the ancillary companies that can be developed. The alcohol industry is not what it is without the bar and restaurant industry, right? And so there's obviously restaurateurs and people that have done extremely well developing community spaces that are safe. That's the future of the plant, is having communal spaces. That's really important. And that's a really great opportunity for, again, people of color to really get involved and find something that maybe isn't biting off more than we can chew. As I'm a minority owned company, I'm a Black and Italian man. And so I know that it's really difficult for me to have access to certain things, but I may have a social network of people that are more inclined to support me. And so my risk comes down with different types of businesses, both delivery and social gatherings. I think that is an enormously important thing what you just said. And I just want to make sure we don't overlook that.
Absolutely. And as consumers, we have a role to play too in influencing the success of those businesses. So we encourage you as consumers to know who are the minority owned cannabis businesses in your space, and can you be their customer? Do you like their product? We encourage you to give them a try, to go into their store, to look up their brand, to find their story. And because, as you know, they're at a severe disadvantage, and historically have been disadvantaged and harmed by the way this plant's treated. So let's, we all have a role to play in that. Even if cannabis is legal in your state, the fight is, ask anybody on this call, the fight is far from over, because regulators and lawmakers, we had a push in this state where people are really trying to demonize high THC products. And it's always a cry about, what about the children? Well, we've proven that children don't use more cannabis in a legal state. So we always want to consider that, but the fight's not over, because the laws will continue to affect the way we do business. And Jessica, you were nodding your head. Did you want to add something a second ago?
No, not at all. I think
Okay.
landed good there.
Okay. So how about, we always want people to find a good job, but sometimes you find a job and people are not doing things by the book. This is a highly surveilled industry, and law enforcement is watching closely, as are the regulators. So what would your advice be to somebody who's in a job and they find out they might have compromised themselves? There might be some shady stuff going on, and especially if I've got a record, I can't afford to get mixed up with something like that. Any advice other than find something else?
I'd like to jump in here. I joke with my team that my middle initial is not C for Kathleen, but for compliance, because I will not ask them to do something that I myself would not be doing. And that is because, every day, folks say that, we're doing something federally legal, which is true. But, we have the privilege of being, this is a massive privilege to be in this space and to be, making these business moves. You can be in spaces and feel that things aren't right. That's also, again, a level of awareness and knowledge of industry that you should do research on before you jump in. What are the basics, right? How much can I sell to a customer at one time? What are some of those basic compliance laws so that you step into, sometimes really new businesses and can know, your moral compass will definitely lead you, and you'll be able to listen to that a lot better. It is very, very important in states, for example, like Colorado, where in order to work in cannabis, you have to be badged by the state. And so if you have compliance issues or things, that badge can actually be taken from you, and then you're unable to be in that space any longer. So it really is very, very important that you are aware yourself of what the laws and regulations are in your own state, both for what's really important as well is how you enjoy cannabis personally and also professionally, right? You also want to make sure that you're being a conscious cannabis user outside of work, because you also don't want to have, be breaking rules there as well for your own personal limits and things like that. But compliance is very, very important. And you can tell by how old a company is, or how many stores that they have and how many resources that they have, whether or not that you're on shaky ground. I've worked for companies that are multi-store outfitters, and we have compliance technicians. So they're doing checks for us regularly. You have that level of security. But if you're working for a store that's maybe just a standalone store, it's a small business, maybe they don't have the resource to have a compliance technician. So you become a person that's actively working in compliance for that company as well. So I hope that maybe answered the question, and maybe somebody else has something to add.
Can I build on that one?
Please.
Because it actually ties back to an earlier question you had asked about what is it you wish you had known? And for me, I would answer that question as, what was I surprised by? It's sort of a taken for granted within this industry of hyper compliance. Like, this is the story of moving from a legacy to regulated market. The differentiator, how you win in this space, is by being not just the bar set for compliance, but continuously exceeding that. That is how you set yourself apart from the competition in this space. And it's a function of where we're coming out of, right? We are still dealing with federal prohibition. We are still on the path for states becoming licensed and regulated. And right now, whether you agree with the level of restrictions and regulations or not, how you win this game, I'm just going to be super pragmatic. How you win this game is by exceeding that bar on compliance, which means you've got to have your nose. You've got to be asking those questions up front. You've got to understand if they have SOPs, and you have to be comfortable as before you ever walk in that door and take that job, that they're focused on the right things, because there are no shortcuts right now as we build this industry. And I would love to philosophically debate what level of regulation is the appropriate level of regulation for this industry going forward, because some of these are ridiculous. I'm looking at Jeff and Jess, and I know what they have to deal with. But this is the game, and these are the rules, and this is how you win. There is no deviation from that. So I would go, if you can't report up, you've got to figure out, we've got regulators in each of those states. You figure out how do you report out, and you find how in your community, how you can escalate this, because ultimately that is the game changing. And to Jess's point, this can impact your individual career going forward in this space.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. And so we just want to preach on that a little bit, because your reputation will follow you. Even though it's a growing industry, it's a small enough community. People will know how you've done in your former job. And if you aided and abetted somebody who's a bad player, people will remember that. So what you do really does matter, kind of going back to Jessica's point. And there are a lot of good players. You don't have to search really hard, but understand you don't have to put up with garbage either. Some people have a very immature workplace, or they don't have sexual harassment and a level of sexual harassment policy and a level of maturity that allows you to be professional. Continue looking, because it's not all like that. Those certainly do exist though. So just kind of user beware on that. Jessica, did you have something else to add? Anything? Okay. You all, we're about at time, and I just wanted to thank you so much for your time, for your expertise. If you're a participant on this call, we're going to try to do a series of these that will be on the second Saturday of each month at this time. So if you're following LPP, please stay tuned. We have a commitment from Vanks to come back and kind of do a part 2 of this conversation, where we talk about building your resume and interviewing techniques, finding that job, moving up in the company, all those things that are critical to landing and being successful within that job. So we're going to dive deeper into this topic. But if you have ideas for topics, please let Mary and Evelyn know. So if you're already connected with LPP, let us know what you're interested in. We want to develop content that's important to you. That's what this is all about. Panelists, thank you again. We appreciate and love what you're doing. Continue to be successful, and we wish you well on the rest of your Saturday.
Thank you from LPP, for everyone who attended. Thank you so much for all of that awesome information. I've been listening in. And again, I dropped in the chats the link to register for next month's webinar, topic to be determined, but the link is built so that you can register. And I've also dropped in there the link to become a LPP constituent to tap into all of the other resources. Thank you all so much, and happy Saturday.